Hi everyone, I'm Rose, and today our monthly class is when is the best time to buy. Thank you so much for joining. Like I said, I'm Community Rose. Also, my name is Rose Cabral, and I'm joining you today from Sacramento, California. So let's jump in. I will share my screen. Let's see this one. And how about now? Okay, great. Thank you. Everyone can see my screen. Let me just make sure I have the chat so we can see what's happening. All right, here we go. There we go. Okay, cool. So, like I said, we're going to talk about when is the best time to buy. And I think it's called like the secrets of the seasons. So let's dive in. First of all, I want to share that you belong here. If you are any of these things listed, if you're not listed, you still belong here. And if you want to send me a link and be like, hey, I need to add something, let me know. But I'll go through them. So if you're a single woman, if you're an artist, maybe you are a social justice champion, maybe you're renting or you're retired. Maybe you are looking to buy or you're looking to sell. And maybe you're ready for your next home that you want to live in. You could be part of the queer trans community. Maybe you are divorced or going through a divorce, or you're widowed, or you're a millennial or a Gen Z, or there's probably even another generation I need to add on here because people are getting older. Okay. Anyways, welcome. Thank you for joining. You definitely belong here, and I'm glad that you're here today. So, tonight we are going to be talking about when is the best time to buy. So, we're going to go through the seasons. I'm going to give you little secrets about each season. We are going to go over some housing stats and interest rates because everybody is always curious about those. And I want to make sure you have the info about what is actually happening from my perspective. We're going to go over your timeline and planning. So that is our journey that we have for the next 40 or so minutes. And let's start the journey. So, why this might matter to you, maybe why you joined today. Maybe you're dreaming about having a space of your very own and you want to figure out your timeline. So this person is looking in a snowball. It kind of looks like a crystal ball to figure out where you want to be, what you want to happen. Or maybe you are hearing conflicting stories in the news and you want to know what is actually happening. We hear conflicting stories all the time about basically everything. So it's good to listen to people who actually know what's happening. And I know I'm not, I mean, I'm an expert, I'm a real estate expert, but again, like there are things that I don't know as well. So it's good to just get as much information from the people who are um knowledgeable as possible instead of just like the people trying to get clicks, clickbait, or sound bites. Okay. So this also might matter to you because you want to ensure that the roots you have established in your community will not be uprooted. Maybe you are renting and your landlord is thinking about selling or raising your rent, and then you could be uprooted. So maybe you want to make sure that doesn't happen to you and that you have a safe and stable place to live. So I want you to imagine for a moment if you finally knew when the best time was for you to buy a home and you could create a plan and a timeline. What would that feel like? Just tell me in the chat while I take a sip of my drink. Yeah. Okay, I see that it would feel amazing. It would feel like you have a plan. It would take out some of the guessing steps and would make me want to start action planning. Yeah. Right. Because a lot of times maybe sometimes we don't know where to start. And so we just kind of like keep putting it off. Or we think it's like too big of an obstacle. And so we're like, that's too big. I don't know if I can do that. So yeah, definitely let's take out the guessing and get to the action planning. I love it. All right. So, what are you most interested in learning today? Another chat for you, since I love to be a little bit more interactive and hear what you are interested in so that I can talk about it. And even sometimes, sometimes people put things in the chat and then I get ideas for what we can talk about in the future. So it's very helpful. So some people want to know about what the interest rates are. That's been in the news a lot. Is there a season or time of the year that is better to buy than others? Yep, good question. We're definitely going to talk about that. Yeah. All right. Let's jump in. Okay, so who am I, this person talking to you? Maybe you know me, maybe you don't. But if you don't, I'm Rose. Hello. And I have a 20-year-old cat that you can see here. I have a chicken. I am part of some really amazing women's groups that really try to uplift and support one another and come from like an abundance mindset, which is really amazing. I'm also part of the Sacramento Community Land Trust, and our goal is to put people over profit and try to ensure that we can get housing and stable housing and affordable housing, and keep people in their housing. And also, this will actually photo, I probably should take off soon because it's a year old now. This is from last year's, the Homeless Memorial. And so that's what is happening today. They're going to have the Homeless Memorial. So that's a little bit about me. In terms of my real estate life, so I've been a real estate agent for 12 years. And this year I put out a podcast called Home is Where, ... And I love to sell homes. Thank you, celebration. I know. Yay. I love to sell people's homes and make them look fabulous. I also volunteer at Loaves and Fishes. I love to give people their keys, and I'm a top agent. Not that like awards are really that important to me, but just in case you were curious, I'm a top agent in my company of 1,000 agents. So that's me. And my goal is to demystify real estate because I think that it is people are made to feel like it's way more complicated than it needs to be. And that creates a barrier for people. And I want to just demystify it so that it's no longer a barrier, so more people can become homeowners. All right, so back to the season. So, okay, first tell me what your favorite season is in the chat. I'm curious. And your options are fall, winter, spring, and summer. Fall and spring, okay. We got a winter. Okay, well, that's good. We're moving into winter, so yay for you. My favorite is summer because it is warm and the days are very long. So like this day, the shortest day, I'm like, I love the longest day of the year. So I love it when it's dark outside. It doesn't get dark until like 8:30 at night. That's like my favorite. All right, so let's jump in to the seasons in real estate. So winter. Winter is the season that we just entered today. It's a slower time in real estate. There are less buyers looking, and there are also less homes on the market. So you can have less competition, but you also may have less to choose from. It's colder usually. So if you're in other parts of the country where it snows, it may be like even more difficult to look at houses. And like you have to, I think like real estate agents out there have to think about like scraping the snow so people can walk and the driveway so they can park. And that does not sound fun to me. But if you love snow, that's good for you. Um, Also in winter, it could rain. We did have kind of a mini monsoon yesterday and it rained a lot in a very quick period of time. But if it does that, then it's a great time to check the ceiling and see if there are any leaks in a house. Um, and because there are less buyers looking and less listings, it could be potentially a good time for you to negotiate with a seller, especially if a home has been on the market for a while. Maybe they want to get rid of it before the spring season or before the end of the year. So that could be potentially good for you as a buyer. So I also want to mention, I mentioned a little bit ago the winter solstice. Since today is the winter solstice, I'm going to talk about it because I kind of forgot until it was today. So the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year. It marks the end of the descent into darkness and the beginning of the return of the light as the days begin to get longer. And it also signifies new hope. So anything is possible in the coming months. So if you're here and you're thinking about buying a house, you can have some hope in the next few months that that is possible for you. You can find a place to live. It's a time of pure potential. It's also a time of rest. And I think this is a really important one because I think that we forget to rest a lot, myself included. I'm talking to myself. So I think resting so that you have the time to dream up the dreams that you have and everything that you'd like to do in the next year. And something I learned today is the winter solstice is 9 hours shorter of daylight than the longest day of the year. So my favorite day is the summer solstice because it's the longest day. That's in June, and it is about 16 hours and 38 minutes of daylight. And today, the winter solstice, it's 7 hours and 50 minutes. So it's like half the daylight, which makes sense. But anyway, so I like daylight. So that's the winter solstice. I also wanted to mention, since I'm in real estate and real estate has to do with people living in houses, today is also the day of the homeless person's Memorial Day. And so unfortunately, we have a lot of unhoused people living in Sacramento and across the country, even the world, probably. Yes, the world, of course, we know this. And so this Memorial Day is to honor those who died while they were unsheltered and to also recognize our collective grief because we know that it doesn't just impact the people that pass away, it's their families, it's their loved ones, and it's our whole community as well. And literally homelessness is a matter of life and death because I mentioned yesterday we had like a minor monsoon. I don't know the real definition of a monsoon, but like there was a lot of water in like 20 minutes that came down. And if you're living outside in a tent and that much water dumps on you, like your stuff is going to be soaked. If there's wind, it could like get blown away. And so like living outside is literally a matter of life and death. So in 2022, last year, 203 unhoused neighbors died in Sacramento County. And this year we've had 195, and we know that the year is not over yet. So another stat that is very sad is the average age of an unhoused man was 51 and unhoused woman was 47. So we know that people living outside, it's literally cutting their lives short and literally killing them. So I like to advocate for those people because I know that, well, I believe everybody should have a safe and stable place to live. That includes people who are living outside. That includes people who are renting and they're barely making it and they're about to be put outside. People living in their cars. So if you have a chance to attend one of these Memorial Day services, they're really a nice place to go and just remember and honor the people. They read out the names of the people who passed away. And I'll put a link to it's the nationalhomeless.org website. That's the website who has that Memorial Day. And then there was an article in Sacramento where I pulled the stats about the number of people that passed away. And I put those in the chat. So yeah, just always thinking about how real estate impacts people, both people who have homes and who don't have homes, and our community as well. So, all right, moving back to the seasons. So we did winter because we're in winter now. So that's kind of how I started, it's winter now. Next up will be spring. So in spring is the most popular time for real estate. And there are usually a lot of new listings because people maybe they didn't want to list their house in the winter, or they had it listed in the fall, they took it off and they relisted it in the spring. We have warmer weather. There's also a lot of really beautiful flowers and trees in bloom, so you can see like what the landscape looks like of a house. And so it's a popular time for people to look. Also, I think another thing is people, maybe they make New Year's resolutions in like January, and their New Year's resolution is to buy a house. So they're like, okay, January, our New Year's resolution, and it takes them a couple months to then be ready to actually go out and buy a house in the spring. So it's a pretty busy time to look at houses. Then we have the summer. So summer is the time when some people travel because maybe they have kids or youth in school and they have summer break, and so they'll travel, and so they won't be looking at houses. But there are also other people who are looking at houses during the summer because they don't want to move when their youth are in school. They want to move when they're on the break. So in the summer, there are lots of open houses. The weather is usually nice. As I mentioned, probably 5 times already, the daylight hours are longer, which means you can look at houses later in the day. And if it's hot, which also happens in the summer, it can get very hot here in Sacramento, but that's a great time to see if the air conditioning works when it's hot. Because if you walk into a house in the summer and does not have air conditioning, or it's not working, you will know and you will ask why. So those are some good things about the summer market. Also popular. Fall is kind of when things are slowing down. And so you have people who are settling in back from their summer breaks if they went places. They're going back to school. In the fall, there is potentially more room for negotiation. Like if a seller is trying to sell before the end of the year, they might be more motivated to negotiate. Some people want to be settled before the holidays, before the end of the year. They want to like be in their house, or maybe they had their New Year's resolution was to buy a house, and they're like, okay, so it's almost the end of the year. If we're going to meet our New Year's resolution, we have to buy a house now versus, wait till the next year. There also are potentially fewer houses to choose from because the inventory gets lower. Question in the chat, are there any tax benefits to the end of year buy or sale? Good question. I think it depends. There are tax benefits to buying a house. You can write certain things off. And so if you do buy before the end of the year, you can write them off for that year versus waiting the next year. And then you have to wait till the next year to write them off. And then some people, like investors, if they have multiple houses, and they're doing what is called the 1031 exchange. So that's where they have a house, they're selling it, and they're using those funds to buy a different property or multiple properties. Sometimes they will need to do that before the end of the year because there's a timeline on it. And so, yeah, it can, the end of the year is a date when people, may need to do things in order to get certain benefits. Also, at the beginning of the year, like certain laws change, like tax laws or even different like real estate. We have a lot of real estate forms that change in January, or we have to have more disclosures. And so, yeah, if you want to get it, like there was one email I got today and it was like, starting January 1st, you're going to have to do this other thing. And so it's like, if you want to avoid that and get the house now versus having to do more paperwork. So, although I do the paperwork as the real estate agent, so it probably doesn't matter for you, but yeah, the end of the year can make a difference for people. Let's see, where are we going next? Oh, some data. Okay, so we went through the season, winter, spring, summer, fall. And I just wanted to give you some stats that actually kind of mirrors what I already said, but you can see we're looking at actual data and I'm not just like making this stuff up randomly. So you can see here we have let's see, it's 2017 through 2023 on this side. On this side, it's the amount of homes for sale, and down here it's the months of the year. And so we can see, let's take 2023, for example, this red line. So you can see in January it was low, and then February, March, and April, it kind of like increased. And then you can see May, June, and July and August, there was like way more homes for sale. And then September, October, it kind of like leveled out a little bit. And then November, December, it went down a little bit. So there weren't as many houses for sale. And that is similar to the other year, the other years. There's this kind of curve where it goes up and then it goes down towards the end of the year. 2020 was kind of an anomaly, so we kind of like throw that one out. Yeah. That was just a wild year. And yeah, let's look at some more stats. So this comes from the Sacramento Appraisal blog. Ryan Lundquist is great at putting together stats for us. And so we can see here, this is talking about the difference between where we are now today this is from November of 2023 versus November of 2022. And so you can see that even though housing prices kind of fluctuate throughout the year and listings go up and down, between this time last year, housing prices, the median price has actually gone up 3.45%. And the average price has gone up 3.6%. So from 605,000 to 627,000. And this is for the Sacramento region. You can see here though that the number of sales actually went down. So in November of 2023, it was 1,145. But in November of last year, it was 1,325. And that's a difference of 13%. There are a number of factors for that. We have less inventory, so less homes are actually on the market. And then we have the interest rates went up pretty high. And so those things impact the actual number of houses that sell. Yeah. I guess the other thing on this list that I like to see is the short sales. There's only one, which is good. And the bank owned sales are low because I don't want to see those. I saw a lot of those when I started. It was the majority of bank owned and short sales. And it's just not good for? What is a short sale? Good question. So a short sale is when you're selling the house and say that let's say you owe $400,000 on the mortgage and you're selling the house, but the house can only be sold for $300,000. And so that's a difference of $100,000. And so the bank, the place that owns your mortgage, is going to be like, okay, we're going to take a loss of $100,000 in order for you to sell this house. Or they might be like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to foreclose on you and then we're going to take your house and we're going to own it ourselves. That's kind of an extreme example. Like, although back in 2010 and 11, like that's what was happening. But yeah, that's a short sale. So the short is the amount that you are short that you owe on the mortgage. Did I say that right? Yeah. I think I said that right. 300,000. Yeah. You owe 400, you can only get 300, so you're short 100. Yeah. And the reason that I don't like to see those is because that means you owe the bank money. That means you're gonna lose, like you're not gonna get money when you sell your house. You're not gonna have a place to live. And so we saw a lot of people were being displaced because they couldn't keep up with their payments and their houses went down in value and the bank eventually took a lot of those houses. So I like to see houses in the hands of people and community and not banks or even corporations. So let's see what other stats we have. So this one, hopefully you can read it. It's actually from like 2000 to 2017. And it's for the whole country. So it's a little misleading over here because it says like the top price is 250,000. So that is definitely not in California. But over here we have the number of sales. So you can see the reason that there's such like a dramatic shift is like this is in January down here, and then this is in the summer up here, and then January and the summer again, just to show you that difference during the seasons really does make a difference every year. And the number of actual sales and then also the price changes through the season. So like in the winter, it's lower. In the summer, it goes up. It goes down again. It goes up again. Every year, it's done that. You can see this was the recession in 2012 that I was talking about, where the sales were really low and the prices were low, but then things have been going steadily up again. And it's just following that same seasonal pattern of winter, summer, where the inventory goes low in the winter and then it goes higher in the summer, the same with the price. Where I got this graph from was the Association of Realtors, and they also shared that between February and March, the sales activity increases 34%. And the prices rise 3%. And the busiest home selling months are May, June, July, and August. And for the whole country, the average number of sales during this 4-month period, the May, June, July, August, is 2.1 million. And that accounts for 40% of the annual sales volume. Happens during those 4 months. June is the peak of the selling activity. The slowest months of selling are the winter, November, December, January, and February. And when you compare the sales in the peak season in the summer with the activity in the slow season, the winter, the total number of sales in the winter slow season account for 68% on average of the total activity in the peak season. So let's say the peak, right? You're at 100%. In the winter, you're at 60% of that, 68% of that. Yeah. So here they give an example. The total sales volume May through August of 2017 was 2.2 million. The number of sales from November to February was 1.5 million. So it's a much reduced amount. Okay. I'll put the link to where I got this information so you can cite my sources. Okay. One more graph, just because I like graphs and I think they tell a good story. So this is going all the way back to 1990, and this is the median price for California, Placer County, Sacramento, and San Joaquin. So California is this gray line here that goes up the highest. And then Sacramento is the blue line. That's kind of very close to the purple San Joaquin line. But again, it's just like going up and down. It shows this giant increase in price in 2007. And then it went down, right? The recession. But then we've steadily been going up. You can see this was the pandemic, kind of 2022. And then it just, we're kind of maybe leveling out. Nobody really knows. And so I showed this graph just to show you that even though the prices and the number of homes goes up and down throughout the year, over time, housing has gone up in California for now. And again, this is from the Sacramento Appraisal blog. Okay, so another thing that's important to think about, so we talked about the seasons. Another thing that goes along with the seasons is interest rate. And so I pulled some news headlines about interest rates that we've seen in the past week. Mortgage rates in America dropped to their lowest level since June. They were all the way up at 8%. They dropped to like 7%, 6.5%. There's a question, will mortgage rates drop to 5% in 2024? That's what everyone would like to see happen. So maybe we'll see. There's another article, falling mortgage rates lend a helping hand to home buyers. And then 30-year mortgage rates plunge below 7%. So like just in the past 2 months, we've seen interest rates like go to the highest they've been in like years to then dropping like another like 1.5% down. So pretty quickly. And interest rates, they depend on, they're impacted by, oh, thank you. Yes, what impacts interest rates? Perfect question in the chat. They're impacted by the overall economy. They're impacted by inflation, job growth, and then stock prices, corporate earnings. So like how our economy is doing, because, and I'll talk about it on the next slide, but the Fed, the Federal Reserve wants to kind of try to keep us stable. They're like, let's keep America stabilized so we don't go like swinging from one extreme to the other, because that can be very chaotic. Mortgage rates vary from lender to lender as well. And that can be because different lenders have different appetites for risk and different overhead costs. So some lenders will lend to people who don't have a great credit score because they're okay to take on more risk, or they also know that the credit score doesn't necessarily tell you about the person, but that's a different conversation. And yeah, but overhead costs, right? Like, do they have a giant building they have to pay rent on, or do they have all of their people work from home? That can lower their overhead costs. But yeah, let's talk about the Fed, because so I was actually, another thing I learned today, is I'm like, the Fed, like, what does that stand for? I feel like I should know this. So the Fed stands for the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, which maybe everybody knows but me, but I just am sharing because I didn't know. And their goal is to provide the nation with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. So they want us to like be stable so that our money is worth the same, our money has a good value to it in comparison with other countries. And so how this impacts interest rates is this group of people they don't set the interest rate, but they set the rate that then the interest rates pull off of. And so I put these dates on here are dates when they have meetings. So January 31st, March 20th, those are the first ones in 2024. And they have 2-day meetings and they talk about all of these things, job growth, inflation. They talk about those things, they look at the numbers and they decide what they're going to recommend for rates. And so at the end of on these days, they'll come out and they'll say, okay, we're raising interest rates, we're dropping interest rates. And so you'll see like a lot of news stories during those times because that's when they make their decisions. And so in thinking about when you want to buy a house as well, it's like, and thinking about your interest rate, like on these dates, there may be changes to the interest rate and like they'll announce it. And I'll have to ask my lender, but I think the lenders are already anticipating what they're going to say potentially, or it might be the day after, but like it's going to be close to around these dates that something is going to change. And so in the past month and a half, what happened is they had one of these meetings. And at the meeting, they were like, okay, well, we're probably not going to make any more increases over the next year. And so everybody got really excited and then interest rates went down. Whereas they had been at 8%, right? So if you were looking at 8% and you're like, oh, well, they're going to have a meeting and you don't know whether they're going to raise it or lower it. So there's risk here. But if you're like, they're going to have a meeting, let's wait till they have their meeting and see what happens. If you would have waited, then your interest rate could have been like 7%, which is a big deal. And again, like your lender will be able to help walk you through all of this as well. And you can lock in your rate potentially so that you are at less of a risk of like losing it if it's a good rate. There's ways to do that. Yeah, it's interesting. So that's the Fed, and they have a big impact on interest rates, and interest rates have a big impact, especially if you're getting a loan, because that will determine what interest you're paying and how much your monthly payment's going to be. Let's see. And then once you have your interest rate, that's the rate unless you refinance. Yes. Yes, exactly. So once you get your interest rate, and it's probably going to be for a 30-year mortgage, that's the more common one. Then for those 30 years, that is your interest rate for that whole time, as long as you get a fixed interest rate. Another thing that was happening, like in 2009, 2010, was people were getting adjustable interest rates. And what that meant was you have the same rate for like 2 years or 3 years. It's the same rate. It's a lower rate. And then after that 3 years, it jumps up. So let's say it's like 3% for those 3 years. And then after 3 years, it goes up to like 7%. And then it's 7% for the rest of the 30 years. So that's an adjustable interest rate. Sometimes people get those if they're like, I'm going to move in 3 years. It doesn't matter. But again, we never know what's going to happen really. So be cautious. But then if you refinance, you can get that's the other opportunity to get a different interest rate. So that's what happened last year and the year before is rates went really low, right? They were at like 2%, 2.5%. And everybody with like a 5% or a 6% interest rate, they're like, okay, I'm paying 6%, I'm going to refinance and I'm going to only pay 2% and my payment is going to go down really low every month. Or they were saying, okay, I have a 30-year mortgage. I'm going to shorten it to 15 years. My payment is going to stay the same, or maybe it's like $100 more a month, but like 15 years you've shaved off of that loan, right? So, yeah, interest rates have a really big impact on how much you can afford. And um, and that's another reason why we're not seeing a lot of houses on the market right now, because some people are like, yeah, I want to move. I don't like my house. I want to move, but I have a 2% interest rate. So they're like, I don't want to lose my interest rate because if I move, then I'm going to go get a 7% interest rate and I don't want that. And so people are predicting that when the rates go back down to like 5 or 6, then more people will be like, okay, I can move. I can get rid of my 2% interest rate and I'll move. I'll get a 5% interest rate, but it'll be fine because I built up a lot of equity in my home. I'm buying another home where I want to actually live. So that will be very interesting to see in 2024 if that happens, because if that happens, I feel like we have a lot of people that are like, I kind of want to move. I moved during the pandemic. The interest rate was great, but I didn't really like where I moved to. We have some people that have a little bit of buyer's remorse. If they all decide to move, right, we'll have more houses. We already know we have a lot of buyers. Some buyers got priced out once the rates went up. Like when the rates went up to 7-8%, they couldn't afford the monthly payment anymore, so they weren't able to look at houses. But once that rate goes down again, then they'll be able to look at houses again. So that's why we've seen Barbara Corcoran, who is she's one of the Shark Tank people who's like amazing. And she's been saying like the housing market is going to be very hot in 2024. I kind of hope she's not right, because I don't really want to be in a chaotic housing market again. But I think that's why if you want to look for a house like January, February, March, because after that in the spring, it might get a little bit more chaotic again, is what I'm thinking. I'll have to go back to my predictions video. My predictions video, though, actually, if you're on YouTube watching this, you can go back to my predictions video. I said rates were going to go up to 9%. And so we didn't do that. We haven't done that yet. So that's good. So predictions, see, they can be wrong. Okay. So also, okay, so the question was, when we began, is when is the best time to buy? And it was kind of a trick question, because the real question is, when are you ready to buy? Where do you want to be? Like, you're the only person who knows when the right time to buy is, because you know what's best for you. I can give you all of this information and you can look at all of this information and like help figure out a plan for yourself. But like, you're the only person that can be like, okay, this is the right time for me. And in order to do that, I think it's really important to sit down and think about where you want to be, where you want to live, who you want to live with, where the location is that you want to live, if it's a neighborhood or a city or a state, like where do you actually want to be? What does your home look like? Is it a townhome? Is it a single family home? Is it a detached home? I guess, yeah, we're supposed to say that now because family, right? Okay. Is it a detached home? Is it a tiny home? Is it a, a boat house? They sell those. Yeah. So like, what does your home look like? And yeah, what's your timeline? Because if you get really clear on where you want to be, what your timeline is, then you can take these things into consideration about the season. And you can be like, okay, well, I'm not sure that I really want to buy in the summer because you're going to be competing with a lot of people and it's going to be a little bit more chaotic and you might have to put multiple offers because there are more people. And so you might decide like, okay, I'm going to buy in the fall when maybe things are slowing down a little bit and I can be flexible with moving during the fall instead of the summer. So I think taking all of the things we talked about today and then applying them to what works best for you is the most important thing. There's, I think it was like Redfin, and they're like, this day is the best day to buy a house. And I think it was in like November. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But like, also, it has to be the best day for the actual person who's looking to buy the house. So, what has been the most helpful or interesting thing to you today? Or if you have any other questions, we have a little bit of time if you want me to talk about something maybe I didn't talk about. Um, yeah, the chat is open. Or it can be what you're hopeful for. Let's see. I really thought the info about interest rates was super interesting. And the Fed meeting dates. Yeah. I could see how paying attention to that could be helpful in the planning phase. I know. I know. I think I'm going to put those Fed dates in my calendar and maybe we'll plan some of these monthly meetings or monthly classes about them. Like, we could probably even do a monthly class about the Fed and like dive into that more. Um, because if I didn't know what the Fed meant, probably a lot of people don't like really know what it means. Not that I know everything, but also like it's something I hear all the time. So, um, yeah, hopeful that rates go down. I know. I know. Although they're not as, it's all relative. I mean, I don't know. I think it's very interesting because I went to a graduation ceremony for people who went through like a home buying course and they're getting, their graduation for going through this course. And there was a bank and they offered to give the people an interest rate of 4%. And I was like, how, like, can everybody get that? Like, why? I'm wondering, I need to find out more, but I'm wondering if they're like buying down the rate for them because you can buy down your interest rate. It costs a lot of money, like thousands of dollars. But I'm wondering if that's what they're doing because if the interest rate is 7% and they're giving 4%, that's like 3% lower. So also we need community banks because then we wouldn't need to worry about a lot of this stuff. We can set our own parameters. Let's see. I love what you said at the end about how buying is really on your own timeline. So true. And I can see how everyone's situation could vary. Yeah, it is. It is. People try to tell you like what you should do. And I'm like, okay, you should do what works best for you. Here's all the information so you can make an informed decision. Um, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. So let's see. Ways that you can get involved with the things that I'm doing. If you found this helpful, I have a lot more information. I have the You Can Become a Homeowner self-paced course. It is short videos. They are self-paced. You can watch them all in one sitting if you want, or you can take them over a couple of days or weeks. They will walk you through the home buying journey. The videos are 10 to 30 minutes. You can also just listen to them if you don't want to look at my face all the time. That's fine too. You can hear them. And the goal is to give you step-by-step info to prevent you from feeling overwhelmed. And there's also an online community. And I'm thinking about maybe through the end of the year, opening this up. Yeah. So if you're watching this before the end of the year, I will allow you to join the course for free. How about that? Happy holidays, happy new year. Okay. The other way you can join in what I'm doing is my Home is Where podcast. It is brand new. I have 3 episodes out with some phenomenal people, and it's really fun. It's where I ask people the question of what home means to them and see how they answer. And everybody has a different answer. If you want to be on the podcast, you can contact me and we can see if we can get you scheduled to be a guest on the podcast. But it's really been some really great conversations about what home means to different people. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you can't find it, let me know and I will try to get it on wherever you can't find it. Okay. And then also, if you know anyone that is selling their home, I have a Love Selling Your Home guide. I have it has lots of tips on how to sell your house because it's not as easy as some of these places try to make it sound like. And like I said, there's new paperwork coming out next month. And yeah, you got to make sure that you do the paperwork right. So I would like you to think about where your next step is, whether you listen to the podcast, join the online community, or just maybe share this video with somebody else. I loved having you here today. Thank you for all the questions you asked and the input and feedback you gave. These are some of my clients who I love and was able to get them their keys to their very first house. And we had so much fun that we had a photo shoot with them. And so I hope you enjoyed today and that you can see yourself as a homeowner if that's where you want to be. You can become one. It is possible. We just got to demystify it and break down the steps so that you can get the keys to your very own house. So thank you so much for joining. I am Rose, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the year. Happy winter solstice. And I am excited to see you in 2024. We're going to continue this monthly free class. If you would like to hear about anything in particular, feel free to send me a note and let me know what you want to hear about. And that's it. Bye.